Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang in San Francisco. I am bringing you Morsels of a Thought number 1795. So, for 1,795 days straight, I have been here bringing you morsels of a thought of what is hopefully wisdom. Wisdom is knowing what to do. Doing it is actually called virtue. So, I am simply bringing you synopses of other people's life experiences and what wise people say, and 1,795 days worth of morsels of a thought. I am simply bringing these to you, and I hope you enjoy or feel inspired by the words that we read and say. So, their life experiences. Here we go. I'm going to start from the beginning of page 10 in Allyson Chavez's The Prosperity Approach, the simple formula to ultimate prosperity. So, here we go. That is the book right there. Yeah. That was the proverbial straw that broke me. I was doing everything I could think of to do. Not only had my mom and my brother died, but my dad died. I was left completely alone in the world. And my God wouldn't even throw me a little scrap of comfort when I so desperately needed it. So I turned my back on him, capital H. I stopped praying, stopped reading the scriptures, and would have stopped going to church, except that I still had faith in my religion, and it was important to me that my children have a strong spiritual foundation and grounding. I know people who have done this, who have been strong with their religion but wouldn't go to the church, but they wanted their children to have a strong foundation. Anyway, here we are with the book. The author says, for several months, I became cynical and snarky, which wasn't like me at all. The world got darker and darker until one day a small voice reminded me about energy work and the universal law of attraction, and I was making this experience harder and darker than it needed to be, regardless of my relationship with God. I began looking for what I called pinpricks of light. Okay, uh, I'm going to interrupt here. Yin Yang's going to say that energy work is exactly what the word Qi Gong means. Energy work, Qi Gong. So if you have heard any woo woo stuff about Qi Gong, maybe some of it is true, maybe not. But keep in mind that that is the same work that we are trying to do. Allyson Chavez is also doing Qi Gong. Okay. She calls it energy work. I began looking for what I called pinpricks of light, she says, quote unquote, in my dark, abysmal world. Instead of focusing so much on how everything was falling apart, I began to actively look for things that made me feel a little bit better. For example, I had a core group of girlfriends I'd known since elementary school, and they rallied around me and showered me with love. My marriage was still strong in spite of the financial strain we were under. And if I had to lose a family member, I was grateful it was my adult brother who I had a great relationship with. There were no regrets. In spite of my grief, I know it could have been so much worse. I didn't lose my spouse or a child. As I swung my focus from all that was wrong and instead started looking for things that were right, I began to feel a tiny bit of relief. I followed that small light, and as I did, I noticed that people began to come across my path, energy workers and thought leaders, and I felt hopeful in a way that I hadn't felt in at least a year. I began to study universal laws and was reminded that my thoughts were influencing my experience, which made it harder, darker, and last longer than it needed to. Gradually, I realized that feeling abandoned by God was due to my own blocks and my own beliefs about not being supported. Once I realized that, I began to pray again, trusting little by little and following the whispers of my heart. I began researching different energy modalities online just to see what was out there, and I began to open myself up to receive spiritual guidance in different ways from before. We were able to sell our home very quickly in early 2012, even though it was at the bottom of the market and we knew it. But for once, there was something more important than money, and I was happy to take a small amount of equity and move, even though there wasn't another home to move to yet. In the meantime, my family of six moved into the two-bedroom basement of my husband's parents' home while we went house hunting. It ended up being a wonderful arrangement because during this time, I finally began feeling supported again. Since we only had a small rent payment to make, we actually had money left over every month. For those, for the first time in our lives, my family took a big vacation and we went to Disneyland. I started feeling safe where money was concerned and learned more about universal laws and how they work in my life. Through a series of remarkable, quote, coincidences, end quote, I began to make plans to phase out of my direct selling business, and I was led in a very divine way to practice energy work, which had the most profound impact on my life up to that time. I became intimately acquainted with my intuition, and I just knew that I needed to share this new life with others, that it needed to be created as a business, and it needed to be done online. And I had absolutely no idea how to do it. For the first time in my life, I let go of the hows and trusted they'd be shown to me as I went. I focused on the next things to do, which was to set up a website and get certified in this new modality. It took 6 months to do that. During this time, I knew I'd need a business coach, so I was actively looking for one online. As I continued to move my feet, God continued to direct my steps. I was led to the coach I needed at the time, and she taught me how to take a practically non existent business to six figures in a relatively short amount of time. It took me about 2 years. It took me about 2 years to grow my business to that level, and within a few short months, it grew again. Looking back at that dark, bleak time of my life, I'm filled with wonder, awe, and gratitude that it happened. Though I wouldn't want to revisit it, that experience is what led me directly to this work I do that makes my heart sing every day. Life as I know it today would not have been possible without the devastation experienced in 2011. The deep darkness is what The deep darkness is what opened the way to inconceivable light, which is what inevitably happens when you look for the light. The prosperity approach, the simple formula to massive prosperity. Believe me, my friend, I've been there. I know the fears, the anxiety, the wonderings, and the constant mind chatter along the road to prosperity. I've experienced firsthand going from nothing to something bigger than I'd ever imagined, back to nothing again. More on that later. Through this journey, I've learned the things that work and the things that distract. I've learned how simple it is to create prosperity with the full understanding that simple does not mean easy. By using the pillars and secrets I have discovered along the way, I've changed every aspect of my life for the better. We live on a planet that operates in linear time. This means that there is a time buffer with everything we experience. The time buffer varies in length. Some things take seconds, while other things take years, but the time requirement is there. We are reading Allyson Chavez, The Prosperity Approach, the simple formula to ultimate prosperity, because we're taking the words of other people and bringing them when they're wisdom, and we're creating virtue by doing the right things for ourselves. I am simply bringing you the words of others. It will take some time, Alison Chavez says, it will take some time to create true prosperity. It doesn't have to take a really long time, so take heart. However, if you want true prosperity to last, you'll have to skip the magic bullet. It requires patience, consistency, persistence, and dogged determination. But it's the best way you can spend your time because not only is it a ton of fun, but you'll be spending it learning the true process of creation. This is your handbook to prosperity. By using the strategies taught in this book, you'll be able to shortcut your way to prosperity. Through a lot of trial and error and prayer and inspiration, I discovered the 3-2. Sorry about that. I discovered the 3-2-1 formula for true prosperity. 3 pillars plus 2 secrets equals 1 prosperous life. This is the book I wish I'd had when I first started out. How to use this book. I don't believe in only teaching the theory of prosperous living. I'll give you the theory and the philosophy, but I'm more interested in the practical application of the philosophy of prosperity. You can understand prosperity on an intellectual level, but if you don't feel it in your core, you'll never experience it to the degree you want. You'll notice that this book is laid out like a workbook. This is, after all, your handbook to prosperity. So use it. You'll find tips and exercises that will assist you in connecting to the feeling of prosperity in a very short amount of time, which is crucial when you're deliberately creating a prosperous life. Be sure to stop and do each exercise before moving on to the rest of the book. You'll also notice space for you to jot down impressions. If you want to get the most out of this book, you'll do everything this book says. It will lead directly to prosperity. Keep a highlighter handy and mark passages that are important to you. That way you can easily flip open this book and see what grabbed you, and you can use those passages as reminders of what to focus on every day. Creating true prosperity is fun. It doesn't need to be a chore. In fact, if it feels like a chore, you can bet that you're actually pushing prosperity away from you. So, take a lighthearted approach to this book and don't take yourself so darn seriously. Page 14, Chapter 2, The 2 Secrets to Prosperity. Stella Terrell Mann. Stella, T-E-R-I-L, oh, excuse me. Stella Terrell, Terrill, Mann, M-A-N-N. She says, I came upon one of the most ancient and universal truths that to affirm and claim God's help even before it is given is to receive it. Desire, ask, believe, receive. Stella Terrell Mann. Allyson Chavez says, why am I starting the explanation of the formula with the secrets instead of the pillars? Because, as you'll soon learn, this formula is dependent on the secrets. Effectively creating true prosperity revolves around the 2 secrets, but the formula would be really confusing if it was 2-3-1, wouldn't it? Prosperity at its core requires only 2 things. That's it. And while on the surface they look quite simple, they're much harder to execute in reality. True prosperity is dependent on knowing and mastering these 2 secrets because everything turns on them. I remember when these secrets first came to me, I had created a high income, but because of my inner frequency and undisciplined thoughts, I lost that income within a year of creating it. I'd built my online mentoring business around teaching universal laws as a way to create miracles in your own life. I loved teaching and mentoring, but I didn't have the correct mindset or skill set to effectively enroll more clients into my program, and I didn't hold my value. I began to worry that I might be charging too much. I wondered that if my clients didn't see results, was that my fault? And as I allowed those thoughts to take root, it led to greater self doubt and fear that I would lose everything I had worked so hard to build. I'd also attracted quite a few entrepreneurs who wanted me to mentor them privately to show them how to grow their businesses as quickly and successfully as I did mine. I figured that since I'd done it, I could teach it. And while that is technically true, it is like eating a plate full of brownies. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Teaching business building was not my genius or passion, and I stepped out of alignment with my purpose by taking on private clients and teaching them business strategies. That added to the pressure I heaped on myself because now I was really worried what would happen if my private clients didn't get results or a return on the significant investment they had made with me. As a result of not holding my value, staying true to my purpose, and being disciplined in my mindset, I had a harder time enrolling clients, and I didn't even want to renew the private clients I did have because I was so afraid I would, quote, fail them, end quote. So clients weren't renewing, and I wasn't signing on new clients to work with, no matter how I tried to skill up, quote, end quote, in sales. The truth was, I'd built my company on pure energy and grit, and I was burned out and didn't even realize it. As you'll learn later in this book, the principles worked perfectly, so by law, the money had to leave. We were now, quote, broke at a higher level, end quote. Life was tempting me to go to another dark place, but I refused to give in to that temptation again. I remembered the lessons I had learned 4 years before. My thoughts had made that dark time last longer and harder to get through than it needed to be. I was going to do it differently this time. We are reading Allyson Chavez, The Prosperity Approach. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Allyson Chavez. Good morning to John Clark. Good morning to Gina Portoff. Good morning to Colleen Dracos, AC Rosita, Liz Rose Cantara, Thelma Pacheco, Mandy Olekshi, and the one that um I don't remember your name, but I remember you were there. Um, I can't remember your name. Okay, so anyway, I wanted to say hello, and also to Janet Ali Krebs, who's talking in on the internet too. Tom Krebs's family. Anyway, go back to the book. It is The Prosperity Approach, the simple formula to ultimate prosperity by Allyson Chavez. She says, I had invested a lot of money into higher learning and personal development after we hit that income, but none of that education had brought a return on my investment yet. As I watched our income go down as our expenses went up, panic really wanted to settle in. I desired to unlock the secret to prosperity, but my mind kept shrieking at me to throw in the towel and get a, quote, real job, end quote, somewhere else, even if it was $10 an hour. God ended up having a stern talking with me one afternoon, which became the turning point in my prosperity. I was going back and forth in my mind about moving forward and figuring this out, or going back to trading time for dollars and doing energy work for my own benefit. Doing energy work for my own benefit. My attitude was pretty defeatist, and I remember the thought suddenly coming into my mind asking what I was going to do. Was I going to get up and was I going to get up again and again and again until I figured this out, even if it took the next 50 years? Or was I going to give up, give in, and get a, quote, 9 to 5 end quote, without ever reaching my goal? It was my choice, but the choice needed to be made. I didn't feel judgment either way. God would love me regardless of what I chose. I knew that each choice would lead me in a vastly different direction. That's when I declared to myself and to God that I was in this for the long haul. I'd stick with it as long as it took to master the inner work of prosperity. Now, here's a passage from William Hutchinson Murray from his 1951 book, The Scottish Himalayan Expedition. William Hutchinson Murray said, until one is committed, there is seriously. I seriously turned off these alarms and they're still going off. That's interesting. Sorry about that. I turned them off, but they went off anyway. They went on anyway. Okay. William Hutchinson Murray, from his 1951 book, The Scottish Himalayan Expedition, said, until one is committed, there is a hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, that ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then Providence, capital P, moves too. All sorts of things occur to help that one would never otherwise, excuse me, all sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision in one's favor, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. That's William Hutchinson Murray. Allyson Chavez says, that's when things begin to change. My outer circumstances hadn't changed yet, but I had changed on the inside, and that's all that was required. Now, Joseph Murphy is quoted here in a passage. In order to change external circumstances, you must change the cause. Most men try to change conditions and circumstances by focusing on conditions and circumstances. To remove lack and limitation, you must remove the cause, and the cause is the way you are using your conscious mind. Joseph Murphy. Allyson Chavez says, I knew that a massive change inside me was all that was required to create an eventual massive change in my circumstances. So I celebrated the change going on within me and concentrated on holding that new inner state as long as I could, as often as I could, because as long as I could, as often as I could, because that was the key. I was in my office one day pondering on prosperity and what it really takes to create it when this thought came to me as clearly as one man talking to another. Allyson, you only have two jobs. Connect to me, capital M, and learn how to receive. That's it. Everything else will take care of itself, end quote. I knew right then that those were the two secrets to prosperity, connecting to God and receiving his gifts. The inspiration about the pillars came a little later as physical, practical ways to support us as we connect and receive. So let's unblock those secrets a little more, shall we? Prosperity secret number one. The first secret to true prosperity is connecting to your true source, capital T, capital S. Most of us confuse channels of prosperity and the source of our prosperity. Our bank account, job, businesses, bosses, and bosses are not our source of prosperity. They're simply different channels which God uses to bless you with financial abundance. And if your spiritual language isn't God or Heavenly Father like mine is, just substitute whatever vocabulary resonates most with you to describe your higher power, capital H, capital P. So we will use this book next Monday. Allyson Chavez, the the prosperity approach, the simple formula to ultimate prosperity. So I talk to you later. I hope I'm inspiring you to take wisdom and do the right thing for yourself and for mankind. We bring virtue into the world this way. Okay, old Kinderheck. Bye bye.